On the 1st of July 1902, J.P. Morgan's 300-foot steam yacht dropped anchor in Kiel Harbour on the Baltic coast, and Kaiser Wilhelm rowed out from his own yacht, the SMY Hohenzollern, to meet him. These two met on yachts because J.P. Morgan had just bought control of the North Atlantic shipping lanes, and the German Emperor wanted to know what Wall Street intended to do with them. Morgan had just launched a $120 million trust called the International Mercantile Marine Company, the IMM. This was an attempt to privatize and monopolize all transatlantic shipping. $120 million in 1902 is about roughly $4.7 billion today. Morgan's IMM was incorporated in New Jersey, and it absorbed White Star Line, Atlantic Transport Line, Red Star Line, Leyland Line, American Line, Dominion Line, and the International Navigation Company. Morgan now had his sights on the HAPAG, the Hamburg Amerikanische Paketfahrt Aktiengesellschaft, and the Norddeutsche Lloyd. To understand why this Wall Street banker was buying foreign steamships, you have to understand how JP Morgan made his money. JP Morgan's business strategy was so aggressive that financial dictionaries had to invent a verb for it. Morganization was JP Morgan's formula for taking over an entire industry and killing off the free market. Investopedia defines it as restructuring an industry to eliminate competition. In reality, Morganization was the blueprint for corporate cartelization. Morgan would find industries with lots of competitors, buy them all, roll them all up into a trust, control the entire supply chain top to bottom. You might think that the market looks free and full of competition, but all of these rivals had been brought into a room with Wall Street money, and they were no longer competing. They were all owned by the same parent entity. Morgan didn't just buy the factories, he also bought all of the raw material and all of the distribution network, the transport. If the industry was iron ore mining, then Morgan owned the mine, but also the steel mill, the railroads, the port docks, so that basically anybody working in that industry would have to pay Morgan a toll at some point just to have their goods moved. Morgan also understood that he didn't need to own 100% of a company to control it. So, in exchange for financing or rescuing a company, he would demand seats on the board of directors for himself and his business partners. This is how a tiny group of Wall Street bankers ended up sitting on almost every corporate board in America. And that is how they were able to coordinate prices and market access behind closed doors. Morgan didn't care about building better ships or making better steel. His business strategy was an engineering system designed to financialize industrial assets. His goal was eliminate price competition, lock down entire supply chains, and extract guaranteed returns through board-level cartel control. In 1901, Morgan had bought out Andrew Carnegie and combined over 200 competing steel manufacturing plants into U.S. Steel, the world's first billion-dollar company. He did the same thing with American Railways, reorganizing the Erie, the Pennsylvania, and the New York Central lines until a handful of men in his New York office set the freight rates for the entire country. After all of this mainland United States consolidation, the next logical step for Morgan was what's called vertical integration. So what is vertical integration? Imagine you own an apple orchard. If you pay a trucking company to haul your apples to the city, and then you pay a grocery store to put them on the shelf, those two middlemen take a cut of your profit. But if you buy the trucking company and the grocery store, you get to keep every penny of profit from your apple tree. You also get to choose who else's apples get picked up or put on the shelf. So if a rival farmer tries to sell his apples, you're going to charge him double for transport. That was JP Morgan's greedy logic. Once he had control of all the steel and all the railways, he took control of all of America's port terminals and then set his sights on transatlantic shipping. Morgan's logic was if he owned all the ocean ships, then he could offer factory owners a single contract that covered the train, the port, and the voyage across the Atlantic. Independent ship owners, who only owned their ships, not the railways and the ports, couldn't compete with this. JP Morgan was offering an all-in-one supply chain. Between 1900 and 1902, JP Morgan went on a European ocean liner buying spree. He bought the British White Star Line. This is the company that would later build the Titanic. He bought this for £10 million, which was roughly double its market value. He bought the Leyland Line, the Red Star Line, and the Atlantic Transport Line. Before we go back to Kaiser Wilhelm, I want to pause here. I want you to think about this. What are the implications of a private American banker buying up all of Britain's naval merchant infrastructure? Shipping was the vascular system of the British Empire. This was a Wall Street banker in 1902 buying up the logistical engine of British power. When the British Parliament realised that a private Wall Street bank now owned their auxiliary naval reserves, they panicked. To stop the last major British transatlantic line falling to JP Morgan, the British government executed a public bailout. They gave the Cunard Line a £2.5 million state-backed loan and an annual £150,000 subsidy to build 2 state-backed superliners. The fact that this company was in such deep financial trouble that it needed that massive state loan tells you a lot about JP Morgan's strategy. These companies did not fall into deep financial trouble randomly, all at the same time on their own. JP Morgan was manipulating global trade markets. The British political class were aware of this and panicking, but most working class taxpayers never noticed a difference. These companies continued to wave Union Jack flags. This was state theatre. The British Admiralty actually insisted that these JP Morgan owned ships continue to fly the Union Jack and hire British sailors. This was saving face. The sailors on these ships still wore British uniform, but every pound in revenue flowed straight to New York City. Britain never recovered its maritime independence after this. By the time World War I broke out, Britain was entirely dependent on Wall Street's merchant fleets and JP Morgan's credit lines to even feed its population or transport its military. After merging all of the British ships into his new trust, JP Morgan set his sights on Germany. He fully expected the German shipping giants to fold, just as the British did. He expected that these companies too would sell out or collapse under the pressure of his railway network. He was wrong. These German companies already had an economic weapon that Wall Street couldn't touch. They had control over Eastern European human migration. The primary profit driver for these companies was carrying people, Jewish people. These ships moved what's called steerage passengers, millions of displaced people fleeing violent pogroms. In the 1890s, HAPAG managing director Albert Ballin had struck a deal with the Prussian government. The Prussian state had set up Kontrollstationen at every railway crossing on the eastern German border. Prussian police stopped all migrants trying to enter Germany, and if the migrant did not hold a prepaid ticket to one of these ships, they were either turned around or detained. Ballin turned imperial checkpoints into a guaranteed passenger pipeline for his ships. And I'm running out of record time again, so go to part 3.